So, we are discussing the 13th chapter, Kshetra, Kshetragna, Vibhaga, Yoga. 6 questions. Fourth question, what is Gneya? Okay. Third and fourth questions, what is Gnana, what is Gneya? Gnana means knowledge. Gneya means that which is to be known. What is the difference between Gnana and Gneya? In English language, we use one word, knowledge. Often, these words can create confusion. Knowledge as instrument and knowledge as the goal. That is what the Lord means here. Knowledge, there are certain things which is called knowledge. There is certain thing, using that instrument, we come to know something else. For example, if someone wants to be a doctor, simply, as a small child, he cannot enter into a medical college. He must have what is called a right type of preparation for entering into medical college. Suppose somebody wants to become an IT engineer. That is a totally different type of preparation. Somebody wants to be a dairy manager, a different preparation. So for each type of goal, a certain type of preparation is needed. Gnana. What is the meaning of Gnana here? Instrument. Preparation. That preparation which will lead me to the goal. So Gneya means that which is, what is the purpose of this instrument? You have a car. Car is an instrument. What is the purpose of a car? To take you from point A to point B. Suppose you have a phone. What is the purpose? To talk. So here knowledge has been defined as a preparation of the mind so that will lead to some goal. Now, all our life we are only acquiring knowledge. That means what? That is not really the goal. That is only an instrument. You go to school or college, you acquire one type of knowledge. That's not knowledge. That is an instrument. Then you get married, then you get some experience, another type of knowledge. That is not the goal. Then you retire and you start thinking, attending Gita classes, meditation, going to ashramas, reading scriptures, doing satsanga. You acquire another type of knowledge. That is not the goal. That is only an instrument. For example, you read Gospel of Ramakrishna. You get certainly knowledge, but that's not the knowledge. That is instrument, preparing yourself for something else. Reading Gospel is not the goal. Reading Gospel is the preparation, so that Gospel will tell you that what is to be known. And it also tells you what you should do in order to reach that goal. It gives you both these things. What is the real goal and what also you should do in order to reach that goal. In that sense, here Gita is a scripture. So Gita, what does Gita do? It gives us these two knowledges. What is that? How to prepare the instrument so that we can reach a particular goal. According to Hindu scriptures, there is only one goal. Not many goals, only one goal. What is that goal? Moksha. That is why I am putting it in a simple language, but actually the technical name is Purushartha. According to Hinduism, there are 4 Purusharthas, supreme values. What are those values? Dharma, Artha, Kama. Values are of 2 kinds, instrumental and intrinsic. Instrumental values means that value which is an instrument An instrument is always meant for something else. A car is not for the sake of the car. It is for the sake of a human being who wants transportation. A telephone is an instrument. It is not for the sake of telephone. It is meant for extending information, exchanging information. For whose sake? A telephone doesn't talk by itself. It is always used by some other being, a conscious being. So an instrument is always meant for something else, by somebody else. That is why it is called Artha means value. Purushartha means value to be used by a Purusha, a conscious being. So, 4 Purusharthas we said. The last, which is moksha, dharma, artha and kama, they are only instruments. An instrument must lead to something else. That which is in itself a value is called intrinsic value. Instrumental and intrinsic. Moksha is the only intrinsic value. How this is a value, I will give you a small explanation. You are hungry. And then desire comes. If you are hungry, hunger means hunger is a desire. But before you are hungry, there was no desire. But after hunger comes, you have a desire. Desire for what? For food. Then what do? You eat food. Then that desire is removed. What have you become now? Before you were hungry, you were quite alright. And when you are hungry, you are not alright. After you have finished eating food, hunger is removed. Have you achieved anything new? You have only gone back to the state in which you were before this desire troubled you, is it not? So this is what Vedanta is telling. In yourself, you are pure, you are perfect, you are infinite, you are divine. But somehow we, because of ignorance, and we thought we were not pure, we were not perfect, we are imperfect, we don't have so many things, so we desire so many things. And all those desirable things can be classified into 2. Only 2. What is that? Bodily needs. When we are identified with the body, when we think we are the body, our desires will be confined to what? Only body. When we are identified with the mind, our desires will be confined to what? To the mind. So body and mind are 2 instruments. According to Hindu philosophy, man's personality, that means our personality, consists of how many? 3. What are they? Atma, Manas and Sharira. Deha, Mana and Atma. This is called Jiva. When we say Jivatma, that means Jiva means what? Soul, mind plus body. Jiva, Atma plus body plus mind is called Jivatma. Now, this Atma by itself is pure. Each soul is potentially divine. But somehow we mistake ourselves, identify ourselves with body and mind. So who am I? I am a soul, I have a body, I have a mind. As long as I am identified with my body and mind, or identified for instance with anything, even if I am identified with my cloth, you see, nobody says, are you the cloth? Nobody says, I am the cloth. Right? I have a cloth, I have a shirt, I have a shirt. But these words do not make any meaning. Because if somebody tears my beautiful sari, immediately I feel as though I am torn. I give a blow. If somebody scratches my car, and you see, everybody knows. Me, I am different. but my husband is different. But if somebody touches my husband, then I will beat. Swami Bhagavanandaji, one very interesting experience, Once he was driving through North India hills up to Shillong. He was going somewhere. And then suddenly he noticed a husband was beating a wife. So he couldn't tolerate it. So the driver was a very hefty fellow. So he asked the car to be stopped. He told the driver, go and give a bit of your mind to that husband. So this driver went to that fellow husband and he took a stick and then he said, if you raise your hand, I will beat you, to the husband. Now the wife took up a broom, started beating the driver, said, who the hell are you? You see, this is between me and my husband. Who the hell are you? The driver came slinking back and he said, never ask Swami again. See, we are not saying we are identified with our house, we are identified with our car, with our dress, with our jewelry, but let anyone touch, we feel unhappy. Unhappiness comes why? Because we are indirectly we are attached. Of course, we are identified with the body, we are identified with the mind. Anyway, the point is, the whole Vedanta can be squeezed, summarized into these 4 Purusharthas. So what is it? The soul is solely concerned with moksha. Moksha means what? Just to be one's own self. But unfortunately we are identified with body and mind. So to prepare the body and mind as fit instruments, so that through them we can know that we are the self, not the body and mind, that is the goal. Dharma, artha and kama belong to what? Body and mind. So by practicing the disciplines inculcated in our scriptures, the body becomes fit instrument, the mind becomes fit instrument. When body and mind become fit instruments, then they help us to know who we really are. Just like there is a mirror. We look every day into the mirror. If the mirror is not clean, then we will not be able to have a good idea who we are. Clean the mirror. Then exactly it reflects how we look like. Now if the body and mind become very pure, very clean, then they will be instrumental in making us understand we are not the body and mind. Peculiar, isn't it? But that is the truth, psychology. So Patanjali Yoga Sutra, there is one sutra which is most wonderful. What is that? He says, if you keep your body very pure, then it will disgust you. What is our idea? If you keep your body very dirty, it will disgust you. Do you understand? You keep your hands or body touch something impure, filthy. Then you feel, until you take bath, then you will not feel all right. What Patanjali is telling, that you keep it so clean that your body will disgust you. Yeah, really. Why? Because then when we keep the body half dirty, then it doesn't give that effect. But if we keep the body very clean, then whenever you look, oh, here is sputum coming out, here is sweat coming out, here is something coming out, here is hair is falling, then this very body disgusts you. Then vairagya comes. Because there is no way you can keep the body absolutely clean. Some people, foolish questions. Can we do japam in the toilet?
Oh, God.
Now, where are you doing japam? You are sitting in the shrine. Are you carrying toilet with you or not? Are you carrying or not? living, we are all living toilets. Will anybody deny that?
No.
So that means you should never do any japam. Is it possible to do japam? It's a foolish question, you know. So for a clean person, the body disgusts. For a clean mind, the mind disgusts. Because any impure thought that comes, it agitates us. That is, purity means, you know, try to keep pure. However much you try to keep it clean and pure, some impure thought will come. Immediately it will disgust. It will bring on vairagya. Vairagya means what? Raga, cut off. Raga means identity, cut off the identity. Then what remains? You cut yourself off from your body and mind. What remains? Only you remain. Because you cannot cut yourself off. You can only cut off what doesn't belong to you. You cannot cut off what you are. Whatever belongs to us is different from us. You see the point? Many times I told. How do we know? Whatever object we can say mine, that is different from us. So my mind different from my body, different from you. Anyway, the point that we are discussing today is Gnana means instrument through which we have ultimate knowledge of something. What is that? Gneya. Gneya means that which is to be known through the instrumentality of fit body and fit mind. What is that? Gneya, there is only one. What is that? The self. That is being described here. Where is this self? It is everywhere. Do you see it? No, you don't see it. Why you don't see it? Because it is covered. It is covered with what? Only two things. Covered with two things. Nama and Rupa. So, Shama. Who is the real Shama? Who is the real Shama? You remove the form of Shama. You remove the name of Shama. What remains is Shama. But nobody can do that. Only Shama can do that. Only realized soul can do that. Sri Ramakrishna used to see Divine Mother. Holy Mother used to see Divine Mother. Is she seeing form also? Yes, like a dress. She doesn't identify. What is the difference between Holy Mother seeing us and our seeing ourselves and others? There is difference. What is the difference? When I look at you, I say you are so and so, but you have a soul. When Holy Mother looks at the same person, what she says? You are a soul, but there is a covering of body and mind. And it makes a lot of difference, because nobody is foolish enough to say if your dress is torn, you are torn. Whereas we are torn asunder when this body happens, something happens to this body, something happens to every moment. Our mind is torn between what? Sometimes I jump, I am happy. Sometimes I jump, I am unhappy. Both times I am jumping. Means mind is agitated. Mind is disturbed. Do you understand that? When you are unhappy, you are disturbed. When you are happy, are you disturbed or not? Do you understand that? Supposing, say you are going to sleep. You are tired. You want to go and sleep. And just before you put off the light, you pull the blanket, you are about to switch off the light, telephone rings. And you look up, with annoyance. Who is this fellow who is disturbing me at this time? Then you say, Uma, you won $10 million. Can you sleep? Whole night. You can't sleep. Because even though it is one of the good news, but that good news also agitated you so much Good news also disturbs us. Bad news also disturbs us. That means the mind always disturbs us. There is only one time when the mind doesn't disturb us. You know when? When we are in the state of sushupti, deep sleep, because there is no mind functioning there. Even if you won the best lottery ticket, or somebody has passed a death judgment upon you, sentence upon you, because blissfully you are unaware. That is why it is called bliss. Bliss means what? The mind and the body do not affect the soul. That is called bliss. So, coming back, Gneyam. What is that Gneyam? So, first is Sahasra Sirsha. Wherever you see a head, that is nothing but God. Wherever you see a hand, it is nothing but God. That means whatever we see is nothing but God. But do we see God? We don't see God. Why? Because it is covered with Nama and Rupa. So if we remove Nama Rupa, then what do we see? So, trying to explain so that the idea gets inside our mind. Here is a table, here is a chair. So when I ask you, what is this? You say it is a chair. When I ask you, what is that? You say it is a table, right? Now we are seeing chair and table, but we are not seeing the material out of which these both are made. What is the material? So when I am looking this as wood, then I don't call it this is chair and this is table. I only call it only wood. So there is no difference. The door, the window, and this floor, this chair, this everything is nothing but wood and wood and wood and wood. When we see everything as wood, then what is good and what is evil, that differentiation doesn't come. You see the point? But when we look at people, this Nama, this Rupa, this Rupa and this Rupa is better than that Rupa. This Nama is better than that Nama. We go on discriminate. I am attracted to this. I am not attracted to this. I like this. I don't like this. Raga, Dvesha. This is called samsara. But when we look at the wood, and everything is nothing but one. No discrimination will come. So here, what is the analogy? Here wood means when you see the pure Atman, Paramatman everywhere, then who is a tiger, what is a cow? In the Hindu terminology, a cow is called sadhu, whereas a tiger is a very ferocious animal. Small, big, rich, poor, good and evil, these do not exist at all. What a wonderful thing. You are happy. You see something, you are happy. You are something good, you are happy. You see something bad, you are happy. Because you are not making any discrimination. The moment you make discrimination, sometimes you are happy, sometimes you are unhappy. Our whole life is a tug of war between good and evil. We are running towards what is pleasant, we are running away from what is unpleasant. Every second, this is what is happening. Raga and Dvesha. This is called samsara. Samsara means samsaro. Samsaro. Okay. So, we have discussed earlier in this 13th chapter, Sarvatah Panipadam Tat Sarvato Akshasiro Mukham Sarvatah Shrutimaloke Sarvam Avritya Tishtati, with hands and feet everywhere, with eyes, heads and faces everywhere, with ears everywhere. It rests pervading everything in this world. The meaning is not only that which has a head and ears. Anything we experience through our five sense organs is nothing but Brahman. Gneyam, the ultimate reality, but covered with Gneyam, Nama Rupa. Rupa means what? Rupa means form. Form means what? You know, form doesn't mean only that which the eyes perceive. Sound is a form. Taste is a form. Smell is a form. Touch is a form. Anything experienced by the five sense organs is a form. So, you remove these things, then you see pure thing as it is. This is the truth. That is what he is telling. Then the next verse is Sarvendriya Gunabhasam Sarvendriya Vivarjitam Asastam Sarvabhruchaiva Nirgunam Gunabhoktrya. Sarva Indriya Guna Abhasam, that highest reality illuminates all the indriyas. All the indriyas. What does the eye do? It sees. What does the ear do? Hears. What does the nose do? Smells. What does the tongue do? It tastes. What does the skin do? It touches, feels. These are only five organs. What do the hands do? They grab, grasp. What do the legs do? They carry you from one point to the other point. So, all the 10 sense organs are functioning. Now, the description Gita is telling us, behind all these 10 organs, there is a power without which these sense organs do not function. What is that power? What is that power without which these 10 sense organs, means body and mind, cannot function? The first answer that comes to our mind is prana. If there is to be no prana, you cannot function at all. Body becomes what? Shiva becomes Shiva without prana. Now, prana itself is a power. Behind prana there is something else. Yes, there is prana, but still it cannot function. You are alive, but you are asleep. Can you see? Can you hear? Can you feel? Why? Prana is there. Why? Because behind the prana there is some other subtle force without which prana cannot function. What is that force? Mind. Mind. Because even here, you know, you are sitting, you are looking at me with open eyes. But how much is going inside depends on the mind. If the mind is not here, then you are not here. The mind may be somewhere else. But even behind the mind, there is something without which the mind cannot function. What is that? Consciousness, awareness. If you are not conscious, then your mind will not function. Then your prana, even though it is there, your prana will not function. Your, of course, body also will not function. Do you see the point? That's what is it. Sarva Indriya Guna Abhasa. That which illuminates all the sense organs. That is one description of the ultimate reality. Now, how I explained already how it functions. If the consciousness is not there, your eye cannot see. See means understanding should be there. And understanding cannot come without consciousness behind. So without consciousness or Atman, this body and mind cannot function at all. That is what is being told. Sarva Indriya Gunabhasam. Sarva Indriya Vivarjitam. And yet, it is devoid of all these sense organs. Now, what does it mean? It means, you see, why do you want to use sense organs? You know, you have a purpose. What is the purpose? There is only one purpose.
Enjoy.
There is only one purpose. That purpose is to get knowledge. So the knowledge will give you happiness or unhappiness. Does God need the medium of body and mind? Could, for example, could Sri Ramakrishna see what is happening in America? Could he see or not?
Yeah.
Could he hear what other people are talking there? How could he do that? Because for him, space and time do not have any meaning. He is everywhere. Because he is everywhere, he knows everything. Because he is everywhere, he has everything. Because he is everywhere, he is everything. Because he is everything, he doesn't need anything. If he doesn't need anything, he doesn't need body and mind. When do you need a car? Supposing you are somewhere in London, you want to come home, you need a transportation. So you take a car and come here. But if you are here and you want to be at home, do you need a car? See, we need knowledge. That is why we need all these instruments. These instruments have only one function. That function is to give us knowledge. And because God is everywhere, God is everything, He doesn't need any knowledge. I am everything. I am perfect. Purna. I don't need anything. If I don't need anything, what for do I need? Suppose you are not hungry. Do you need food? Suppose your eyes, you do not want to see anything. Then do you need a television? Yeah. Do you get the point? When there is a want, there must be an instrument. When there is no want, there is no need for any instrument. God has that knowledge, eternal knowledge. I am infinite. I am perfect. Therefore, I don't have any. I'm explaining this. Actually, God doesn't go on thinking. He said, do I need anything? No, I don't need anything. Yeah. So, a person who imitates God, he becomes God. There was a philosopher. He used to go to a supermarket. Morning till evening he goes on, but doesn't purchase anything. And he was asked, so you never purchase anything, why do you go? Then he said, I'm trying to find out how many things I don't need. Yeah. Wonderful story, This kind of story is wonderful. So we don't need many things. We think we need. But after we buy many times first, and then try to find out why did I buy that. And then sometimes we find out we don't have place to keep it. Yes. And then they bring it to Vedanta Center.
That's
Help yourself. We leave so many things there, help yourself. Books and other things. Yeah. Anything, very useless things they will bring. Sometimes good things also. Sometimes, most of the time, useless things. We don't have space. Lot of people want to donate books. We don't have space. And we don't need those kind of books. Essential books we have. Very good books we have. And we don't need any more. But because they bought it somewhere, and then they want, after reading or whatever, or many times without reading also, they want to get rid of it, they will bring to the Vedanta Center. Have you read this Swami? Very interesting book. I asked them, just to poke them, what does it say? Sorry Swami, I myself didn't read. I thought it would be interesting to you. Okay. So, sarva indriya gunabhasam, sarva indriya vivarjitam. So this is, the eye is there. What for the eye is there? I can see here, but I can't see there. But God doesn't need it because He is here, He is also there. Because everywhere He is, wherever there is something, He knows it. So He doesn't need it, any indriya. Mind, does He need a mind? Because mind means thinking. So does God need to think? No, that is why Hindu philosophy said spiritual progress, in one way of speaking, progress from instinct to reason to intuition. Instinct to reason, then to intuition. And as a person progresses spiritually, then in the final stages, he develops what Patanjali called dharma megha, intuition. What is intuition? He doesn't need the medium of the mind. The moment he wants to know, immediately that object presents its knowledge without any intermediary. So he knows exactly what a thing is, and 100% without the medium of the mind. That is called intuition. Until we get intuition, we have to have tuition. So, sarva indriya vivarjitam. Asaktam means completely unattached. God is completely unattached. It has two meanings. Now, attachment, when we use the word attachment, what does it mean? It means whatever we like. Attachment always comes that which gives to us some form of pleasure. Is it not? Detachment naturally comes to us to those things which we don't like, which do not give us pleasure. Is it not? So attachment and detachment. So this is the first meaning. Is God in need of something to make him happy? Therefore, he need not be attached. That means that is the first meaning. Second meaning is there anything other than God to which he can be attached? For us to be attached, we need that there should be two things, the person and something besides that person. Then only he can say that whether he wants to be attached or he wants to be detached. Besides God, is there anything else? Therefore, the question of either attachment or detachment doesn't arise in the case of God, ultimate reality. Third is, attachment means that there must be what is called always a desire. God doesn't any desire. Why? Because he is perfect. Therefore, there can be no attachment. There is a psychological law. Even though we say attachment means we want always to be united with something which will give us joy, pleasure, and separated from something which will give us displeasure or its opposite, right? If there is a law, in this world, nothing can be really attached to anything else. You cannot mix two things in this world together. Impossible. Even supposing, you put water in milk. When you look at that milk, can you say that there is water in the milk? Even though it appears from outside that the water and the milk are so closely attached to each other, in fact, they are not attached at all. How do we know? Because they can be easily separated by a process. Heat the milk, then milk gets separated, the water evaporates and it becomes separated. That is the idea. Now, besides God, since there is no object, the question of two things getting mixed up do not arise at all in the case of God. Therefore, he is called asakta, means ever detached, but not to be understood in our sense. There is no object from which God can be detached. There is no object to which God can be attached. From that sense, that means he is alone, kevala. Kevala means he is alone. There is nobody else. So when there is nobody else, the question of attachment or detachment doesn't arise. There was a very beautiful story, how we get attached to things even though we don't have the things. When we were young, like Panchatantra stories, there was a fellow who used to sell eggs, moving from village to village. So once he collected some eggs and he was going to next village. It was noon, was sitting under a tree, and he ate his some food which his wife tied, and tied the eggs to a branch under which he was sleeping. He went to sleep. Before going to sleep, he started thinking, now I will get so much profit by selling these eggs. Out of that profit, I will buy more chickens. And out of that chickens, I get more eggs. And after selling, I will buy a goat. And I will increase the population of goats, then cows. And I will become a rich man. Then I will get married to a woman whom I like very much. Is making imagination. Then one day she will quarrel with me. Then I say, who the hell are you to quarrel with me? And I will take a big stick and I will give her a good blow. All imagination. But this blow, actually he was having a stick. She gave a blow and that blow fell on that bundle of eggs.
All his dreams happened.
You know, we anticipate so many things which may happen, may not happen, and get attached or detached. Have you seen this? My boss will get angry, then I will react like that. No, we go on imagining so many things like that. Stupid things. God has no such problem because He is eternal brahmachari. Why is He brahmachari? Because there is nobody whom He can marry. Okay, that is why Brahman is called Brahman. So asaktam means he is not attached to anything because he is everything. That means he is not affected. Whatever happens, he is not affected. What does it mean? It means you are that Brahman. So whatever you may think that you are affected, in reality you are not affected at all. The example is a dream. In a dream, you are dreaming, and you are dreaming that you are walking in a forest and a tiger is coming and you are shouting, help me, this tiger is about to eat me up. Then are you really affected? So the Guru comes. Guru, I worshipped you so long, so this is the right time to show some return for all the investment. Then really Guru comes. Then he wants to save you. How does he save you? He gives you such a big slap. Immediately you wake up. All problems solved. You know, for a dream tiger, the only way to save you permanently from a dream tiger is what? Huh? They make you wake up from that whole dream. This is what a real guru does. He is not going to solve the problems. Just as in the dream, a guru comes when you are in trouble. He helps you that particular time. What guarantee is there? Another tiger will not come and eat you up, try to eat you up. Is it not? How many times he is going to come and help you? He is very a clever fellow, you see. Who is going to come and go? Just once I will wake this person up, all problems are, I can take rest permanently. So that is how a guru wakes us up from this dream which we call samsara, so that once we know the truth, then no trouble at all. That is why God is very clever, you know. Hame mukti dite katar nahi, bhakti dite katar hoi. I have no problem in giving you mukti, because if I give you mukti once for all, your burden is finished. But if I give you bhakti, every time you cry man, then I have to run behind you. So, asaktam, sarvabhrit. He sustains the whole universe. How does he sustain? Because we have a body. You see, the body means form. Form means there must be something. You know, for example, here is a book. The book needs a table to be kept. So, this body needs to be sustained. The earth must be there. The whole earth is created for what? For sustaining everything that is in this earth. So, the earth itself is sustained by what? By the power of gravitation. And this whole body needs food. Who is giving us food? Annapurna. Who is giving food? God. Who is digesting the food? God. You know, this Bhagavad Gita, Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashrita Pranapana Samayukta Vachamyannam Chaturvidham. That is, in the form of the gastric juices. Let this gastric juice become little less, you cannot digest. You cannot digest, you will not sustain. So he is sustaining us. He is giving us air. He is giving us the light. He is giving us the heat. He is giving us the cold. He is giving us the water. He is giving everything through these 5 elements. There is a beautiful program on BBC recently. You know, how the wind made us, how the earth made us, how the fire made us. Have you, anyone of you one?
I think I saw part of it.
It's a beautiful, this is what Vedanta had talked about long back. God in the form of the 5 elements is sustaining us all the time. We are born out of the 5 elements. We are maintained through the 5 elements, and we also go back into these causes. Death means what? Going back into the cause. Sarvabhrit. He is also sustaining the mind. How does he sustain? See how wonderful. This topic is so beautiful. How does God sustain? He gives us first of all in the form of medha, knowledge, intelligence. He gave us brain. He gave us intelligence. And he said, I give you the brain, you use that brain. See, if we don't use the brain, whose fault is that? It's our fault. See, Steve Hawkins. Oh, what an immense brain. Einstein. What is the difference between his brain and our brain? You know, men and women always quarrel. Whose brain is better? Always, you know, each try to put down the other one. One woman went to a brain shop. She wanted a new brain because she overused it, you know. So the shopkeeper said, Madam, there is different. Which type? What is your budget? She said, what do you mean by budget? How many types of brains are there? So many varieties are there. So how much this brain costs? 10,000 pounds. What is it? It's a lawyer woman brain. And this is 50,000 pounds. What is it? It's a doctor woman's brain. Then there is another brain. And how much? 100,000 pounds. She asked, why this 100? This madam almost new. Never used man's brain. Hardly used. God has given us brain so that it can be used. Brain is an instrument. Body is an instrument. Mind is an instrument. He has given us the intelligence to use both body and mind and brain for our own good. But he did not tell us that you will have to use only this way. He gave us freedom. But he gave us the manual. If you do this way, you will suffer. If you do this way, you will enjoy. It's called Dharma Shastra. Anyway, the point is he is sustaining us what? Through the intelligence. He is sustaining our mind through the intelligence. He is sustaining our physical body through physical things. Had he not been sustaining, we would not have survived for 1 minute. See, everything, just the right proportion. I am looking into the scientific analysis. You know, if this earth is 100th degree, this way or that way, its shape, then their life would not have been possible. It is possible only because precisely it is that degree oval shape. We are now searching for life in other planets, and they are not able to find out anywhere, at least in our galaxy. So, how privileged we are. And what are we doing? Like Kalidasas, sitting on the branch on which we are sitting, cutting down that branch, we are polluting it. We can't use any river, we can't use any place, we can't open our doors because people will come and steal things or kill us. We are so stupid. So some scientific joke was there, So 10 million years after the earth was destroyed, some creatures from intelligent beings from other planets came. It's called archaeologists. They dug and then they understood how stupid these humans must be. They destroyed themselves. That was the conclusion. Yes, we are destroying. How wonderful this, you just see the sun, the moon, the life, and each other fighting with each other. But anyway, the point is, behind whatever we do, what is the force, what is the power? God only. Sarva Bhrit. In physically, mentally, intellectually, morally and spiritually, God is sustaining us. Nirgunam. God doesn't have any gunas. Guna means quality. What does it mean? To distinguish, see when we say we have knowledge, all that we mean is we can distinguish one thing from the other. You ask a child, what is the difference between this table and this chair? He will not be able to tell. A baby will not be able to tell. But when he grows up, this table is this way, the chair is this way. I know a chair should be like this, a table should be like this. Means what? How does he know what is a chair and what is a table? He compares different qualities, big and small, beautiful and ugly, and likable and not likable, sweet and bitter, etc., etc. These are called qualities. What do the qualities do? They help us to distinguish one thing from the other. That's all. But supposing there is no distinction at all, then how do you know what is what? You will never know what is what. In fact, you don't need to know what is what. Do you understand? Supposing this is sweet. There is only one sweet. Where is the need for you to know which is better sweet and which is worse sweet? There is only one sweet. If there are two sweets, then you comparison comes, which is small, which is big, which is sweeter, which is less sweet, which is more tasty, which is not so tasty, is it not? Yeah. So God, He doesn't need, because He is only one substance, He is called Nirguna. And yet Guna Bhoktrucha. All the manifestations come only from God. One example would be, God is called formless and this world is called Namarupa. Say for example, there is clay. Clay, as an example, it has no form. Nirakara. Nirakara means what? No form. It doesn't mean that it has no form. It means potentially it has billions of forms. Whatever form you want, you can make out of the clay. Small pot, big pot, round pot, square pot, whatever you want, it is your imagination. So what is formlessness doesn't mean it doesn't have form. Formlessness means potentially it has all the forms, because that is the cause. The effect could be different. So God doesn't need any form, but yet He is that source which can be formed into infinite varieties. He is the root cause. That's why it's called Nirguna. He has no qualities. Guna Bhoktrucha. And at the same time, He is the power behind all the guna. If you have intelligence, who is behind that intelligence? God. If you are very efficient, who is behind that efficiency? God only. If it is a beautiful mango, who is behind that beautiful mango? God only. If it is not so beautiful mango, who is behind that? God only. Everything, good and bad, is very relative, very subjective. Very subjective. This is sometimes what you like very much. At other times you may not like it at all. Goes on, tastes go on changing. Everything goes on changing. Friends become enemies, enemies become friends. The whole life is changing, constantly changing. But behind all this change, there is something which is changeless. From the changeless only comes the changeful. That is the meaning of guna bhoktrucha. Bahirantascha bhutanam acharam charameva cha sukshmatvat tad avigneyam durastham chantike cha tat. So the next description of Gneya is Bhutanam Bahihi Antascha. So God is both inside and also outside. Now these words inside and outside are very interesting. Very interesting. How? No, now I will ask you a question. Am I outside you or inside you? Outside. So what is the distinction between outside and inside? And first let me make it clear, because we use words without thinking. That which can be experienced by everybody, available to all, that is called outside. What is available only to each one of us, that is called inside. Simple definition, not very simple, but I will not go into details. So, now I ask you the question, am I outside you or inside you? How? Explain.
Because while you say talking, you just absorb the listening what you are inside.
So I am outside and I am inside. Supposing you are dreaming that you are attending a class, I am asking this question, what would be your reply? Both outside and inside. After waking up, what do you say? Am I outside or inside? See, what is the very wonderful. Inside and outside, both are inside us only. Do you see? The idea that there is something outside, where is it?
Mental.
It is inside me. Inside me. So that is the called delusion. They see both inside and outside. It is only a delusion. Because that which is everywhere, that is both inside and outside. So Vedanta gives a specific example is Akasha, space. Now Akasha, is the space inside the room?
Yes.
Is it outside?
Yes.
So what is the difference between outside space and inside space?
Just a boundary.
So does the boundary really make the space inside and outside, or it only gives the illusion that it is inside and outside? Just because you cannot really divide space. We have to think better. See, an outside object can be kept inside or outside. Space is a concept. A concept is not an object. It doesn't have nama rupa. It is only what is called parameter of experience. Space is not something you can see. Bring half a kg of space. You can't say that. It weighs so much. You can't say that. It looks like this, it smells like this, it sounds like this, it tastes like this, it feels like this. You cannot say about space. It is purely a mental concept. In this connection, you have to understand there are what is called percepts and concepts. What is a percept? Anything that can be experienced through our sense organs is a percept. Anything that is only imagined through our mind is called a concept. For example, friendship. I want Indian friendship. Is there any such animal called Indian friendship? Is there something called Hindu love, Christian love? There is no such. Love is purely a mental concept. Similarly, space is a time-space causation are purely constituents of the mind. Is that point clear? So now, when we are talking oh, there is space inside this room, there is space outside the room. We are trying to divide space into two categories. Actually, you can never divide because it is a mental concept. An object you can divide, but a concept you cannot divide at all. In fact, these walls are also nothing but formation of space. How do you understand that? I have to give you another example. Thakur gives this example. I will come to that. You know, there are places in Arctic areas where ice is formed, the water becomes ice because of severe cold. You understand that?
Yes.
Now, there is a big ice, the water became ice, a big flow is floating. Inside that, there is a space where there is pure water again. So you see, there is water inside that ice block, and it is floating on what? On the water. Keep this imagery in mind. So what is it that is distancing the water inside the ice block and the ocean?
It's the shape.
What is it?
The form.
No, it is nothing but ice. And what is ice?
Water. Another form.
So, ocean also is water. That water inside the ice also is water. Ice also is another form of water only. Keep that in mind. If you keep that in mind, all these bricks, windows, carpets, what we call a room, a house, is made up of what? Space. I will try to explain it. It is nothing but space perceived in a different form is called a house, a man, an animal, a tree, any object. Every object is nothing but pure space looked in a particular way. How hard it is for us to believe, but that is the truth. But to make this explanation a little bit easier, our Vedanta gives us. Straight away if I tell you, you are made out of space, you won't believe it. But I will try to give you two ways to understand this. Hope it will clear the point. According to Vedanta first. So, what is the first creation? Space. From space came what? Akashat Vayuhu. Air. Air became what? Fire. Fire became what? Water. Water became what? Earth. And we have all come from. So ultimately, who is our great grandfather?
Space.
Right? Space. Is it not right? Okay. Now I will tell you how science views this. Here is a elephant, and here is a human being. Here is a mosquito. Keep this. So, who is the parent of the human being? His parents. From where did he come? From his parents. Where from the mosquito came? From its parents. Where from the elephant has come? From its parents. So you go on like this. So ultimately you will see everything has come out of one material. What is that? Matter. And if you go further, matter has come out of another material. What is that? Energy. And ultimately energy came from its father, parent. What is the parent of energy? Space. You know, these are all grosser manifestations of space. What is Vayu? Energy. Vayu means prana. Vayu works as prana, energy. And it became, this is such a wonderful subject. Akasha became Vayu. Vayu became Agni became water. Water became Prithvi. And from the whole known galaxies or whatever, is it, how the galaxies are formed? Out of what? Pure energy. They came out of energy and they go back into energy. So you see how wonderful the explanation. Ultimately, if we trace our origins, ultimately we end up with what? Space. But space also is a creation. So where from did it come out? Brahman. Ultimately, Brahman, ultimate reality, Brahman, consciousness, pure consciousness. So we are all products of what? Pure consciousness only. Now do you see what am I leading at? So there is inside and outside. It is artificial divisions. There is no inside, there is no outside. It is everything is inside our consciousness. These are difficult concepts, I know, but listen and go on thinking about them. Slowly we will understand. We are nothing but pure consciousness. Our life is nothing but pure consciousness. In fact, I will tell you what your thoughts are. That is what you are. What makes you happy? Your thoughts. What makes you unhappy? Your thoughts. What makes you think you are living? Your thought. What makes you think you are dead? Yeah, Mullah Nasruddin, very miserly fellow. So one day he lost his consciousness. So the doctor was called and declared him as dead. Few minutes, and then he took his fee and went away. Few minutes later, his wife was sitting weeping. This fellow slowly opened his eyes and said, "Why are you weeping? I am not dead." Wife got so angry and said, "You think you know better than the doctor?" Keep quiet. So he had no option but to fall back and keep quiet. Meanwhile, the word spread he was dead. The villagers came and took him on a bier, taking him to the crematorium. Now it needs, some money to be spent. So he was furiously thinking, if I open my eyes, get up, sit down and say I am not dead, then all that expenses I have to bear. I better keep quiet. So death is nothing but a thought. Just as waking, dream and deep sleep are what? States of our mind. Not states of consciousness, states of our mind. But all these states are taking place with the basis of only one. What is that? Consciousness. I am in the Jagrata Avastha now. I am in the dream state now. I am in the deep sleep state now. And again, so the time will come, I am going to die. So I am dead. But it is just like waking up to another life. That is what the scriptures are telling. The death is nothing but entering into another life. It is only a longer sleep. And therefore, there is nothing called death. And therefore, there is nothing called life. Everything is a state of thought only. Life is nothing but a state of thought. This we can understand. If you are unhappy, that is a state of your mind. Yeah, what is your unhappiness will become happiness to somebody else. See the interesting thing. A husband and wife quarreling. He says, "Why did I marry?" The wife was telling to her husband, "What a fool I had been to marry you." Husband said, "Yes, I knew that. If you had been wise, you would not have married me. Because you are a fool, you married me. I want to divorce from you." This is the quarrel going on. The neighbor is like, "How wonderful, if they get divorced, I can marry this beautiful woman." One fellow is telling, "I want to get rid of her." Another fellow is saying, "I want to recover." These are all nothing but thoughts. Thoughts. Even delusion is a thought. Delusion is nothing where you see there is a rope, but you see it as a snake. Where is that snake? Snake is not there. Snake is here. Yeah. One lady, is inviting one of our Swamis. Swami, you come to our house. I will feed you many snakes. Snacks. Snakes. So, all are thoughts only. That's why the final conclusion of Vedanta, Manayeva Manushyanam Karanam Bandha Mokshayo. Mind alone, it thinks I am bound, so therefore, no, it thinks I am released. Really, nothing is bound, nothing is released. It's like a dream. Do you see the point? Suppose you dream. You are a fine person, you have not committed any crime. Suddenly police come and arrest you. What would be thinking? Oh, I am bound. Then somebody comes and says, oh no, this is a good person. He can't commit any crime. And the police find out, yes, it was a mistake. So they release you. Then what would be your thought? I am free. I am released. Then you wake up. And you say, who took you to the police station? Your thought. And who released you? Your own thought. So when you are in the jail, you felt bad. When you are outside, you felt very happy. Both are where? Both are nothing but thoughts. So what is spirituality? Spirituality is train the mind in such a way that it will only look at everything in a happy state. That's why I give this illustration always. There was one disciple, and he wanted to progress in spiritual life. He went to his guru and said, help me. And the guru said, are you serious? You really want to progress in spiritual life? He said, yes. Then you go to such and such a person and pay money and get abused for 3 years. Abused. So this fellow was sincere. He went. He was paying everyday money to get abused for 3 years. He paid. And after 3 years, he went to the Guru. Guru said, now go to Syria and there you will meet your Guru, real Guru. He will guide you to God. So this man went to Syria. As soon as he entered Syrian gates, he saw an old man and he started abusing this fellow right and left. This fellow started dancing with joy. The man was surprised. The first time it happened to him, I am abusing you and you are dancing with joy. Why? He said, for the last 3 years, I have been paying to be abused. Here I am getting it absolutely free. The idea is, a person who accepted paying money for getting abused, after that what can make him unhappy? Yeah, especially if it is, most of the people when they abuse, they don't take money. They do it freely. So if you are expecting that I will be in the most unhappy conditions and I will be very happy. Is there anything that can make that person unhappy in this world? Do you get? If I get these things, I will be only then I will be happy. If I don't get, I will not be happy. But a person who says, I will be happy under all circumstances. Nobody can make that person unhappy. What is spirituality? From a devotee's point of view, Thakur, whatever happens, Shakali, Tomari, Ichha. When a person has 100% accepted that, put him in the jail, he is happy. And put him on a throne, nothing makes him less happy or more happy. Everything makes him happy. That is what Sri Ramakrishna is illustrating in the form of a beautiful parable, Rame Richa. So, who was committing the theft? Rame Richa. And why he was caught? Rame Richa. Why he was brought before the magistrate? Rame Richa. Supposing the magistrate says, I will put you in the jail. Do you think that would make him more unhappy? No, he would be equally happy because it is Ramericha. See, we have to think of these parables and extend and say, oh, he was released. Abba, we are relieved because he was relieved. Suppose Ramakrishna says he was put. Then we'd be say, why did that happen? This man is a real devotee. Why should a devotee suffer? Only non-devotees should suffer. And among devotees also, only I should not suffer. Let other devotees suffer. It doesn't matter. Yeah, like Rajaji used to say, of all the people in the world, Indians are best. Of all Indians, Tamil Nadu people are best. Of all the Tamilians, Madras people are best. Of all the Madras people, only those who live in my street are best. Of all the people in my street, only my family is best. Of all the people in my family, I am the best. Yeah. This is a narrow-minded view. So what is the point? That everything is done only by God. When a person has that thought, really he will never suffer. Thakur demonstrated it. He had cancer. He suffered. But that did not make him unhappy. He said that is mother's will. Mother has. He did not pray, get rid of this. He said, okay mother, this is your will, I accept it. Let thy will be done. So that is what we are. Bahirantascha bhutanam. God is both inside and outside. That means God has become everything. Space has become everything. Charam acharamevacha. Both the moving and the non-moving. The living and the non-living. So difficult to understand. That's why sukshmatva tat avigneyam. Why can't we understand that everything is God? Because it is sukshma. Sukshma means what? Extremely difficult to understand. Sukshma is not small. Sukshma, a microbe, bacteria, virus. It is so small, only hardly it is seen through. Now scientists are discovering something wonderful. Dark matter, dark energy. What is dark matter? Dark matter is not really dark. Dark matter is not dark. See, you can see dark. In darkness you recognize this is dark. But that is not dark. Here darkness means you can't see, you can't experience it. But you can infer it through its effects. There is a magnet. You are not seeing the magnet. But whenever you go near, all the iron things, they are behaving in a peculiar way. And you say, why are these things behaving? Is there a ghost something? You can't see the magnet, but you are seeing the effect. Like the dark matter, it is somehow these planets, stars are behaving, moving in such a peculiar way. Gravitation is unable to explain that. Therefore, they have to invent. There must be, since this is the effect, there must be a cause. And that cause we cannot see. Therefore, it is named as dark matter. It is a most marvelous thing. So, God, you cannot understand God. Why can't you understand God? Why can't see God? Because when we say, I want to have knowledge of something, we are always implying something other than me. I want to know you. I want to know about the table. I want to know about that mountain. It is always something separate from me. I am never asking, what is me? Who am I? This is the problem. So where is that ultimate reality? It is me only. Who is the seeker? Me. I am seeking, but I am seeking unfortunately outside. That is the meaning of sukshmatvat tat avigneyam. It can never be known because it is so subtle. So subtle means, what does it mean? Not another object. The knower is looking for himself in the known. The experiencer is trying to experience himself through something else. he will never get it. Like an old man, very myopic, he is searching furiously for his specs. So his neighbor came over. What are you searching for? My specs. Very foolish fellow. Can you search without your specs? He can't search. He can't see. So the only way he could see is putting on. He says, I am searching for my specs. When is he going to get? He's never going to get. Because it's all the time, on his own face. So somebody else has to come and say, foolish fellow, stop searching, because that instrument through which alone you can search is already with you. So you are that knower for whom you are searching in the wrong place. The right place is, don't search, because you are always there. Where am I? Would you ever ask that question? Where am I now? Philosophy, that is called philosophy. Two philosophers, had a curious to go on balloon. They know how to release the balloon, but they don't know how to control it. So it went on floating. After many hours, they were hungry and they were slowly coming down over a field. So they wanted to know where they were landing. So they looked down. A farmer was standing in the field. So they shouted, "Hey, where are we?" So the farmer looked up, looked this side, that side. He took 10 minutes. Then he said, "You are in a balloon." So one man was telling to the other man, "This man is the greatest philosopher I have seen." Why? Because first of all, he took 10 minutes to answer. And secondly, he is absolutely right. Third, perfectly useless. Perfectly useless. That answer is perfectly useless. That is called philosophy. Vedanta philosophy is called darshana. Darshana means what? Direct experience of who I am. So all these efforts are meant only for one thing. What is that? Don't seek for reality outside you, because you are that reality. That's what it's meant. That charam acharam sukshmatva tat avigneyam durastham cha antike cha tat. That reality is both at a distance, also very near to you. What does it mean? It means if you are knowledgeable, it is, you know it immediately. If you are ignorant, for all that it matters, it could be on the other side of the world. See, anything that we are ignorant of, it need not exist. Suppose you want a sewing needle. You know it is there. You know it is there, but you don't know where it is. For all that it counts, it need not exist. Go to a shop, buy it, finish your work, and try to put it in the safe place, you will also get the first one. Because that is where you kept. You are not looking for it in the right place. Avibhattancha bhuteshu vibhattamiva cha sthitam bhutavartru cha tasgneyam prasishnu prabha vishnu cha. This idea we have already discussed. It is undivided in beings and yet remains as if divided. That knowable is the sustainer of beings, as also the destroyer and creator. This is in Puranic language. Dualistically called Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. What does Brahma do? Create. What does Vishnu do? Sustain. What does Shiva do? So that ultimate reality is the creator, is the sustainer, and also is the destroyer. Destroyer means he doesn't really make it non-existent, but he changes the nama rupa. When you squash clay pot, then what happens? The pot merely gets its nama rupa destroyed, but remains as clay all the time. Avibhaktancha bhuteshu. We are all seem to be, I am different, you are different, the carpet is different, the chair is different. But what is the basic, as matter, suppose you look from the viewpoint of matter, then are we divided? No. Only from the viewpoint of Nama Rupa, we are divided. That is the idea. I gave an example. It took long time. Space. We are all finally products of space. Space plus Nama Rupa is what is called world, ultimately. Or even if you go still further, consciousness with Nama Rupa. Atman with Nama Rupa is called creation. Atman without Nama Rupa is called Brahman. This is the only difference. So, Jyotisham tad jyotihi tamasah paramuchyate jnanam gneyam gnanagamyam hridi sarvasya vishtitam. Jyotisham tad, this is a Upanishadic statement, especially the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Jyotisha means light. So that ultimate reality is the light of the lights. What does it mean? What does light mean? Light means that which gives us knowledge is called light. See what it is light, daylight. Then what happens? You come to know, here is a room, here is the way, you can see clearly. See clearly means what? You have knowledge, how to walk in the proper way, how to not to run into obstacles, etc. Light has only one significance. What is it? Knowledge. Supposing there is no light, but you know, like a blind person, he can move about the house, provided nobody disturbs it. But if you have kept something on his way, he will not know, he will stumble and fall down. So the sun, the moon, the stars, the fire, all these things are called objects of light. But God is the light of the light. Why is he called light of the light? Because first of all, what is it that illumines this, makes the sun shine? What is behind the sun? God. What is behind the moon? God. What is behind the stars? God. What is behind the fire? God. What is behind any type of light? It's only God. But really here he is referring to, supposing it is midday, brightly the sun is shining, but I am absolutely blind. Can I see the sun? Even though it is existing, to know that it is existing, I must have that consciousness. Suppose I am not blind, but I am sleeping. Will I know that the sun is shining? So what is he referring to? The consciousness must be there to recognize. You see, we have to recognize this is a human being, this is an animal, this is a tree, this is a mountain, this is a river. Even though they are there, even though light may be there to illumine them, but to know what is correctly, what is that object, I must have that consciousness in the form of knowledge, to know this is this, this is this, this is not this, this is not this. It's a story, humorous story. Why the sun goes round and round, day and night. The sun was born out of Brahma, and he grew up into a young man, and he wanted to get married. So he heard of a girl called Nisha. You know Nisha? Night. So he heard that she is very beautiful, wonderful, everybody loves to embrace her. So he said, I must marry that. So he googled, where is this Nisha to be found? And he is other side of the world. He is here and Nisha is on the other side of the world. So immediately he started. And by evening time, whatever you call it, and what we call our evening, he reached there. I mean, our evening here. We are still here. He has gone to the other side. Then he met a villager. Does Nisha live here? They said, yes. So can I meet her? No. Because she heard about you, she went in search of you. So he started the journey back. So when he reached the east, Nisha was found in the west. He reached west, Nisha was found to be. Day or night he is chasing her. He will continue because when the sun reaches there, there will be no Nisha.
That's very nice.
See, wonderful. Our Puranas can produce wonderful stories. So the whole point is, without that consciousness from within us, we cannot recognize anything. Let there be sun, let there be moon, let there be no sun, let there be no moon. We cannot. That is the point he is telling. Consciousness is the real light. Only then we can recognize this is a sun, this is a moon, this is a star, etc. Is it not? Jyotisham api tad jyotihi tamasaha param uchyate. Wherever the ultimate reality is, wherever that pure consciousness is, there is no unconscious thing at all. Because consciousness and unconsciousness don't go together. Where there is sun, there is no night. Yeah, otherwise, So, two fellows were talking. One fellow was a NASA scientist, and he heard, the other fellow heard that they made a satellite which can go to the sun. Then this fellow was so enthusiastic, come on, let us go to the sun and see what it is. And that fellow said, you can't go to the sun because it will burn you out. तो उसमें क्या बात है, रात को जाएंगे. We will go at night. How will you go to the sun at night? Will there be night if you go to the sun? Yeah. You see, something very wonderful you should know. So, the sun is rising and you can see the whole light. The sky is so bright, so blue, is it not? If you go a little bit above the stratosphere, pitch dark. Do you know that? Pitch dark. You know why? Because there is no medium through which light can be recognized. This is a most wonderful psychological fact. Light is not an independent object. Light is that condition under which you can have knowledge of things. That's all. It is not an object. We are under the delusion, it is an object. It is not an object. But to be able to recognize the light, there must be an object. But what we understand is, if there is light, I can see the object. What we don't think about is, if there is no object, you will not know what is light. Do you understand that fact? Any object reveals light. If there to be no object at all, you will never know what is light. This fact can be experienced when you go there above certain atmosphere. There is no medium through which light can be revealed. It is not that light is not there. Light is everywhere. But there is no medium by which that light can be perceived by us. That is why it appears to be completely dark. So what is the point? The point is, let there be light, let there not be light, but if there is no consciousness, then you cannot recognize either darkness or light at all. So that which controls, that is called Jyotisham Jyotihi. The light of the light means that which also makes you recognize what is light, without which you cannot recognize what is light or what is darkness. That ultimate reality. That is one of the descriptions of ultimate reality. Jyotisham api tad jyotihi. Tamasaha paramuchyate. It is beyond the darkness. And it is gnanam, gneyam, gnanagamyam. Here what is called gnanam means instrument. Gneyam means that which is to be known. Gnanagamya means the experience that comes after knowing what is to be known. To make this point clear, I will give it. You are hungry. You want to eat food. There is a nice sweet meat on the table. Now, first of all, you must have the instrument. What is the instrument here? Rasgulla cannot be eaten by the mind. It can be only eaten by the body. Hand eats Rasgulla. I never heard it. First time I am hearing it. Hand only grasps. So the point is that Gnanam is instrument. That instrument is also God. Gnayam. Okay, here is a wonderful sweet meat. It is to be obtained, to be eaten. That is Gnayam, goal. And then Gnana Gamyam. Through this instrument, through this knowledge, I want to experience that. You actually go, take the Rasgulla, put it in the mouth, eat it and say, it is a very nice sweet meat. So the instrument, the object or goal of the instrument, and the experience that comes out of this interaction of both, all these three is nothing but God. So this body comes from where? From God. The objects that we experience, what are they? They are also God. And when we experience that object, who is the real experiencer? Bhokta. That is also God. Is another way of saying nothing else exists excepting God. That is the simple truth. So with this, the Lord says, iti kshetram tatha jnanam gneyam choktam samasatah madbhakta etad vijnaya madbhavaya upapadyate. So having said this, Lord Krishna is telling to Arjuna, you have asked 6 questions, I have answered 4 questions. What is kshetra? What is kshetrajna? What is gnana? What is gneya? I have answered 4. Now 2 more questions remain to be answered. That I will answer, and that is what he is telling. Very briefly I describe to you what is kshetra, what is kshetrajna, what is gnana, what is gneya, and I will also tell you the last 2 questions also. I will answer what is prakriti and what is purusha. I have very briefly I answered you, but briefly means what? That is enough to serve your purpose. Briefness doesn't mean incomprehensibility. One fellow got a training, efficiency training, time utilization training, how to utilize time very properly. Don't waste time. You have to utilize it 100% and efficient way. So he understood, came back. He wanted to phone to his assistant, lifted phone. Listen, I am not going to repeat. I am going to speak within half a minute. And listen carefully and do what I ask you to do. Blah, 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 blah. Did you understand? He said, no, I didn't understand a word of what you said. What is the use of your time management if the other fellow, yes, you have spoken what you want to speak in half a minute, but the fellow didn't understand a single thing. What is the Lord saying? Whatever I have told you is more than adequate for you to get what you want. You wanted something from me and I gave it to you, and what I gave you is very brief, but that brief is enough, more than enough. What is that? What is that you wanted? So that's what he is telling. Etad vijnaya, whatever I said, having known that properly, mad bhaktaha, my devotee, mad bhavaya upapadyate. He will attain me. He will understand me. He will realize me. What else you want? The Guru says to the disciple, you do japam, you will reach God. What else does he need to know? Zen master, always is awareness. So one man approached him and said, Lord, give me a teaching so I can prepare. So the Zen master was not talking. He took up a small piece of paper, awareness. The disciple was puzzled. What do you mean by awareness? Answer. Awareness means awareness. I did not understand it properly. What do you mean by awareness? Awareness means awareness. Give third time he gave. What is the point? Point is you want to realize God. You want to go beyond the bondage of samsara. You want to become blessed. So that you will never again experience any grief in your life again in future. I have given you all the teachings, more than enough for your digestive power. That's what is it. If you have understood what I told you, then you would have realized God. But still, the questions have not been complete. So that's what we are going to discuss in our next class. What is Prakriti and what is Purusha? I know this chapter is a bit difficult chapter, but this is the best I can do.